The imperial throne of the Valeth Dominion had been empty for 93 days, and the galaxy was beginning to notice. High Chancellor Sereth stood before the assembled council, her four-fingered hands gripping the edges of the speaking podium, as though it were the last stable thing in the universe. "We cannot delay the succession rites beyond the 100th day," she said, and the chamber erupted. Empress Elindra Val Soreth, first light of the Valeth Dominion, keeper of the Eternal Accord, had vanished. Not in the way empresses sometimes vanished, assassinated in perfumed chambers, spirited away by rival factions, dissolved into the quiet machinery of a coup. No, Tai. She had simply left. Her personal shuttle was found docked at Relay Station Orith 7, its navigation logs scrubbed. Her ceremonial armor hung in her quarters, untouched. Her crown sat on her pillow like a discarded thought. She could be dead, Lord Mavar said from his seat among the 12 pillars, his silver skin catching the light. "We must accept this possibility. She is not dead," Sereth replied, her voice controlled. "Her life thread still pulses in the binding lattice. She is alive. She is simply elsewhere. Then she has abandoned us," Mavar said, and the word, abandoned, moved through the council like a blade. Sereth closed her eyes. In Valeth culture, there was no greater shame than an unfulfilled duty. A warrior who fled battle was erased from lineage records. A bonded partner who broke their vow was exiled to the lightless moons. And an empress who left her throne, find her, Sereth said quietly. Before the 100th day, before we must explain to the Dominion why their empress chose to disappear. They searched. 48 intelligence operatives spread across known space, scanning every station, every colony, every registered vessel. They checked the pleasure worlds of the Syndicate, the monastery planets of the Tael monks, the hidden courts of the exiled Valeth nobility. Nothing. Nothing. It was a junior analyst, a quiet woman named Torith, who found the anomaly. A biometric echo on a human colony world. Not a Valeth colony. Not a neutral station. A human world. Specifically, a mid-tier settlement called New Thessaly, population 42,000, known for absolutely nothing except a regional coffee bean competition and an unusually high number of independent bookstores. "That cannot be correct," Sereth said when she received the report. "The biometric signature is a 97% match, High Chancellor. Why would the Empress of the Valeth Dominion be on a human colony world?" Torith had no answer. Sereth dispatched a retrieval team, but thought better of it within the hour. A team of Valeth soldiers descending on a human settlement would be a diplomatic incident. The humans were new to the galactic stage. Barely 3 decades since first contact, and they were, by Valeth standards, bewilderingly informal, culturally chaotic and frustratingly difficult to predict. The Dominion's official stance on humanity was polite disinterest. Unofficially, most Valeth considered them barely above the threshold of civilized species. So Sereth went herself, with a single guard, on an unmarked transport. New Thessaly was exactly as unremarkable as its file suggested. A temperate world, green and brown, with a single modest city, and dozens of smaller towns scattered across rolling hills. The air smelled of soil and something sweet that Sereth could not identify. The biometric trace led them to a town called Heraklion, not even the capital, and within Heraklion to a street lined with small shops and cafes, where humans walked slowly and spoke to each other without apparent purpose. And there, through the window of a small establishment called Marcus and Company Coffee, Sereth saw her. Empress Elindra Val Soreth, first light of the Valeth Dominion, was sitting at a corner table. She wore human clothing, a simple dark sweater and trousers. Her silver-white hair, usually bound in the elaborate coils of her station, hung loose around her shoulders. She was holding a ceramic cup in both hands, and she was smiling. Not the measured diplomatic expression Sereth had seen 10,000 times. A real smile. Small. Quiet. Directed at the man behind the counter. The man was human. Tall, brown-haired, broad-shouldered in the way humans sometimes were, with a short beard and hands that moved constantly, wiping the counter, adjusting cups, pouring something from a glass carafe. He said something Sereth couldn't hear, and Elindra laughed. Sereth had served the Empress for 21 years. She had never heard her laugh. The guard beside her shifted. "High Chancellor? Shall we—" "Wait," Sereth said. The human man came around the counter carrying a small plate. He set it in front of Elindra and said something that made her tilt her head. a Valeth gesture of genuine curiosity, never performed in public, never shown to outsiders. Aelindra picked up what appeared to be a small baked item and took a careful bite. Her eyes widened. She said something to the man, and he grinned, a broad, unguarded, thoroughly human grin, and leaned against the table beside her. He was not bowing. He was not averting his eyes. He did not seem to know or care that the woman at his corner table commanded a fleet of 9,000 warships and ruled over 47 billion souls. Sareth watched for a long moment, then stepped inside. The bell above the door chimed. The human looked up with a professional friendliness. "Morning. Grab any seat you like. I'll be right with you." Aelindra's cup froze halfway to her lips. "Your radiance," Sareth said. The cafe went very quiet. The human man looked between them, his expression shifting from welcoming to cautious. Aelindra set down her cup. Slowly, deliberately. The smile was gone. In its place was the mask Sareth knew, the composed, impenetrable face of the Empress. "Sareth," she said, "the 100th day approaches your radiance. The council, I know what day it is. Then you know I must bring you home." Aelindra's jaw tightened. Something flickered in her violet eyes. Not anger, Sareth realized. Something raw. Something that looked, impossibly, like grief. The human man had gone still behind his counter. He was watching Aelindra with an expression Sareth could not parse. Not fear, not confusion, but something quiet and steady, like a man watching a storm approach and choosing not to run. "Aelindra," he said softly. "Just the name. No title, no honorific." The familiarity of it made Sareth's guard reach for his sidearm. The Empress closed her eyes. "Give me 1 hour," she said to Sareth. "Your radiance, 1 hour, Sareth. You have waited 93 days. You can wait 1 more hour." Sareth hesitated. Then she nodded, once, and stepped back outside into the strange-smelling air of this unremarkable human town, and tried to understand how the most powerful woman in the Dominion had ended up in a coffee shop, wearing a sweater, laughing at tea. A human's joke. His name was Marcus Aurelio, 34 years old. Born on Earth, relocated to New Thessaly 8 years ago. Former paramedic. Current owner and sole operator of Marcus & Company. Coffee. No criminal record. No military service. No political affiliations. No family, parents deceased, no siblings, no partner. Sareth had compiled the file within the hour. It was aggressively ordinary. She sat in the transport, reading it for the 3rd time, when Aelindra emerged from the cafe. The Empress walked differently here, Sareth noticed. On the homeworld, she moved with the precise measured gait drilled into Valeth nobility from birth. Each step a declaration of control. Here, she simply walked, like a person going somewhere. Aelindra climbed into the transport without a word. They flew in silence for 20 minutes before Sareth spoke. "How long?" 3 months, as you know. "I mean, how long have you known him?" Aelindra looked out the viewport. New Thessaly's green hills were receding beneath them. "I came here by accident. My shuttle's navigation system was damaged after I scrubbed the logs. I did it poorly, I'll admit. The system defaulted to the nearest habitable world." She paused. "I had no plan, Sareth. I simply could not stay. Could not stay in the most powerful position in the known galaxy. You say that as though power is something one would naturally want." Sareth had no response to that. I arrived disoriented. I had no local currency, no identity, no understanding of human customs. I wandered into the first open establishment I found. It was his shop. Aelindra's voice softened almost imperceptibly. He gave me a cup of coffee. I told him I could not pay. He said, and I will never forget this. He said, "You look like you need it more than I need the money." That's it. A free beverage? You don't understand. No one has given me anything freely in my entire life. Everything I have ever received came with conditions. Loyalty oaths. Political calculations. The weight of expectation. She turned to face Sareth. He gave me a cup of coffee because I looked tired, and he expected nothing in return. Do you know how long it has been since someone looked at me and saw a tired woman instead of an institution? Sareth was quiet. He gave me work, Aelindra continued. I told him I had nowhere to go. He didn't ask questions. He showed me how to use the coffee machines, gave me the spare room above the shop. He thought I was a refugee, a displaced alien possibly fleeing something. He was right, in a way. And you didn't tell him who you are. Not at first. I told him after 6 weeks. I expected him to change, to become afraid, or calculating, or deferential. He looked at me for a long moment, and then he said, "That explains why you're so bad at small talk." Sereth blinked. He made a joke. He made a joke. And then he asked me if I wanted dinner, because it was Tuesday and he always made pasta on Tuesdays. Elindra's voice cracked. Barely, almost invisibly, but Sereth heard it. He treated me exactly the same. Before and after. The same. The transport hummed through the upper atmosphere. Below them the planet turned, indifferent to empresses and their confessions. "You have feelings for this human," Sereth said. It was not a question. "I don't know what I have, Sereth. I know that for 3 months I slept without dreaming of the lattice. I know that I ate food that someone prepared because they wanted to, not because it was their duty. I know that when I sat in that shop and read human books, and listened to human music and watched Marcus argue with his customers about the proper temperature for brewing, I felt something I do not have a word for in Vela. The Council will not accept us. I know. Lord Mavar is positioning himself for the succession. If you return, he will challenge your fitness to rule. An empress who fled to live among humans, I know, Sereth. And the human. If this becomes known, he will become a target. A symbol. The lesser species that corrupted the Empress. Elindra's expression hardened. He corrupted nothing. He made me coffee and told me terrible jokes, and once, when I could not sleep, he sat with me until dawn and told me about the patients he lost when he was a paramedic. The ones he still dreams about. Her voice dropped. He understands what it is to carry the dead, Sereth, not politically, personally. They docked at the relay station in silence. The homeworld was 12 hours away. Sereth used the time to prepare. She sent coded messages to her allies on the council, establishing a narrative. The Empress had been conducting a covert diplomatic assessment of human culture. Unorthodox, but not unprecedented. It would hold for perhaps a month, long enough to stabilize the political situation. Elindra sat in her quarters aboard the transport, staring at her ceremonial armor, which Sereth had brought. She did not put it on. When they landed on Valeth Prime, the council was waiting. 47 representatives of the great houses, arranged in the Hall of Pillars, their silver and violet skin gleaming under the cold white light of the chamber's bioluminescent ceiling. Lord Mavar stood at the front, his posture radiating barely concealed satisfaction. "Your radiance," he said, and the title dripped. "We are relieved to see you alive. The Dominion has suffered in your absence. The Dominion has survived far worse than my absence, Lord Mavar. Indeed. But the question before this council is not survival. It is trust. An empress who vanishes without explanation, who abandons her sacred post. I provided an explanation to the High Chancellor. A covert assessment of human culture. Mavar's tone made it clear what he thought of this explanation. And what did you learn, Your Radiance? What insights about these humans required 3 months of personal observation? Elindra looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at the council, face by face, pillar by pillar. "I learned," she said slowly, "that they are better than us in ways that matter." The silence that followed was absolute. Mavar recovered first. "Better? Pardon. A species that has barely mastered interstellar travel. That governs itself through inefficient democratic squabbling. That cannot even agree on a single planetary language. Better at being alive," Elindra said, "at valuing each other beyond utility. At sitting with someone who is hurting and offering nothing but presence. We have built an empire that spans 47 billion lives, Lord Mavar. And I have never once, in all my years on this throne, been offered a cup of coffee simply because I looked tired." The council stirred. Sereth watched carefully. Some faces showed confusion. Others showed disgust. A few, a precious few, showed something that might have been recognition. Mavar smiled thinly. "The Empress has been compromised by alien sentiment. I move for a formal assessment of—" "You move for nothing, Lord Mavar. I am still your Empress. And I have returned." "For how long?" The question hung in the air. Elindra did not answer immediately. And in that pause, Sereth saw the fracture. The place where duty and desire pulled in opposite directions, where the woman and the institution could not coexist. For as long as my people need me, Elindra said finally. It was the right answer. The political answer. The answer that would hold the Dominion together for another day. But Sereth, who had served this woman for 21 years, heard what she did not say, that need and want were not the same thing, and that somewhere on an unremarkable human world, a man was probably making coffee alone and wondering if the woman with silver hair would ever walk through his door again. 18 days after her return, the crisis came. It did not come from Avar's political maneuvering, though that continued like slow poison through the council chambers. It came from the border, the contested region between the Valith Dominion and the Keth hegemony, where 3 Valith colony worlds had been under increasing pressure for decades. The Keth attacked at dawn, local time, on the colony world of Sereth 2,000 civilians. Moderate strategic value. The kind of target chosen not for what it was worth, but for what its loss would symbolize. That the Valith were weakened, their Empress distracted, their will fractured. Elindra received the report in her private chambers. Sereth watched her read it. The casualty numbers, the displacement figures, the damage assessments, and saw something she had never seen in the Empress's face before. Doubt. They struck because of me, Elindra said quietly. Because I was gone. Because the Dominion looked weak. They struck because the Keth are expansionist. They have been probing our borders for years. And years ago, they would not have dared. The Dominion's reputation was a shield, Sereth. I cracked that shield when I left. Sereth could not argue with this. The council convened within hours. The response was the predictable calculus of empire. Fleet deployment, strategic retaliation, a show of force to restore deterrence. Elindra approved the military action, and then sat through 6 hours of debate about proportionality and messaging, and the 17 other political considerations that turned the deaths of 2,000 people into agenda items. That night, alone in her chambers, she opened a communication channel she had established before leaving New Thessaly, an encrypted, off-network connection routed through 3 civilian relays. It was profoundly illegal for an Empress to maintain an unsecured personal channel. She did not care. Marcus answered on the second chime. His face appeared on her personal screen, grainy with distance and encryption. He was in the shop. She could see the familiar shelves behind him, the brass coffee grinder, the crooked painting of a ship that she had once tried to straighten before he told her he liked it crooked. Hey, he said. Just that. The most human of greetings. A single syllable that contained warmth and familiarity, and the quiet assumption that the person on the other end was welcome. 2,000 people died today because I was not here, she said. Marcus was quiet for a moment. She had learned to value his silences. They were not empty, the way Valith silences often were. Full of calculation and positioning. His silences were the spaces where he was actually listening. Were you the one who attacked them? He asked. No. But did you order the attack? Of course not. Then 2,000 people died because someone else decided to kill them. That's a different thing, Elindra. You don't understand the weight of... I don't understand empire, no. But I understand guilt. I had a patient once. Young woman, car accident, I was first on scene. I did everything right. Textbook. She died anyway. He paused. I spent 2 years believing I killed her. My therapist spent those same 2 years trying to explain the difference between responsibility and blame. Took me a while. This is not the same. No. Your version is bigger. But the math is the same. You're taking someone else's violence and wearing it like it's yours. She pressed her palm against the screen. A human gesture she had learned from him, the inadequate substitute for touch across impossible distance. I miss your coffee, she said, and meant something far larger. It's still here. So am I. The channel was open for 47 minutes. They talked about the coffee shop. About a new blend Marcus was trying, something from a region on Earth called Ethiopia, which he described with a passion that made her chest ache. About the bookstore next door, which had gotten a cat. About small human things that had no strategic value whatsoever, and were, for that exact reason, precious beyond measure. After she closed the channel, Elindra sat in the dark for a long time. 3 days later, Lord Maevar made his move. He stood before the full council and presented evidence, intercepted communications, biometric data from New Thessaly, surveillance imagery, that the Empress had not been conducting a diplomatic assessment. She had been living among humans, working in a human establishment, and maintaining an intimate personal relationship with a human male. The word he used was entanglement. In Valith, the term carried specific legal weight. It implied a compromise of judgment, a subordination of duty to personal desire. It was grounds for removal. The Empress has bonded herself to an alien, Maevar declared, his voice carrying through the Hall of Pillars. Not through the sacred rites. Not with the approval of the Council. Not with a partner of standing or lineage. She has bonded herself to a human shopkeeper. The Council erupted. Voices overlapped. Outrage, shock, disgust, and beneath it all, the predatory excitement of political opportunity. Maevar's faction, nearly a third of the chamber, rose to their feet in unified condemnation. Aelindra sat on a throne and let the storm wash over her. Sereth approached the dais. Your Radiance, we can still contain this. Deny the relationship. Frame it as cultural research. No day. Your Radiance, I will not deny him, Sereth. They will remove you. Aelindra looked at her oldest advisor, and in her violet eyes was something Sereth had never seen there. Not the steel of command, not the calculation of power, but a terrifying, luminous clarity. Then they will remove me, the Empress said. But I will not stand before this council and pretend that the truest thing I have ever felt is something to be ashamed of. The vote was called. Maevar needed a 2/3 majority to initiate removal proceedings. The tally moved slowly, each house declaring in turn, the ancient ritual of political destruction proceeding with the same ceremonial precision as a coronation. Sereth counted. Maevar had his faction. The border houses frightened by the Keth attack had joined him. The traditionalists, offended by the breach of bonding customs, fell in line. The count reached 31 for removal. 31 of 47. One more vote would trigger the proceedings. House Vareth was called. Lady Dorith, ancient and sharp-eyed, rose slowly from her seat. She had not declared a position. The chamber held its breath. Before I cast my vote, Dorith said, her voice thin, but carrying, I would hear from the Empress herself. Not a political statement. Not a defense. I want to know one thing. What is it about this human that compelled you to leave everything? The chamber went silent. Every eye turned to the throne. Aelindra stood. She descended the 3 steps from the dais and stood on the chamber floor, level with the council, an act that no Empress had performed in living memory. He sees me, she said. Not the crown. Not the fleet. Not the dominion. Me. When I could not sleep, he did not summon healers or suggest meditation techniques from the archives. He sat with me in the dark and told me about his own sleepless nights. When I failed at making coffee, which I did repeatedly, he did not allow me to feel ashamed. He laughed with me, not at me, and showed me again. She paused. I have ruled the Dominion for 11 years. In that time, not one person in this chamber has asked me if I was happy. He asked me on the first day. I did not know the answer, and that is the most damning thing I can say about my life before I met him. Dorith studied her for a long moment. Then she sat down. House Vareth abstains, she said. The count held at 31, short of the threshold by 1 vote. Maevar's face contorted. This changes nothing. The Empress has admitted. The Empress has admitted to being a person, Dorith interrupted. I was not aware that was a crime. The chamber dissolved into shouting. Sereth moved to secure the Empress, but Aelindra was already walking, not toward the throne, but toward the door. Your Radiance, where are you going? To do what I should have done 18 days ago. Sereth caught her arm, a breach of protocol so severe it would normally warrant imprisonment. Aelindra. If you leave again, I am not leaving the Dominion, Sereth. I am going to bring him here. Here. A human, in the Imperial Court. If they are going to judge me for loving him, they will do it while he stands beside me. I will not let them reduce him to an abstraction. He will be in danger. He is already in danger. Maevar's agents know where he is. How long before an unfortunate accident befalls the human shopkeeper who corrupted the Empress? Aelindra's voice broke on the last word. He is alone, Sereth. Because of me. The least I can do is bring him somewhere I can protect him. Sereth released her arm. I will prepare a diplomatic transport, she said quietly. Something that will not alarm the humans. Alindra looked at her, and for the first time in 21 years of service, Sereth saw the Empress's eyes fill with tears. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me, Your Radiance. Thank me when we survive this. Marcus Aurelio had never been on a starship before. He had been off-world once. The shuttle from Earth to New Thessaly, 8 years ago. A journey he had spent mostly asleep with his head against the bulkhead and his legs crammed into economy-class spacing. This was different. The Valith diplomatic transport was vast and silent, its corridors humming with a frequency he could feel in his teeth, its walls shifting through subtle color changes that seemed to respond to the mood of its occupants. At the moment, the walls were a deep, uneasy amber. That means anxiety, Alindra had told him, standing in his coffee shop 20 hours earlier, wearing her human clothes for the last time. The ship reads the emotional state of its passengers. It's meant to help the crew respond to diplomatic tensions. Great, Marcus had said, looking around his shop. The espresso machine he'd rebuilt twice, the crooked painting, the corner table where she used to sit. So, everyone on board will know I'm terrified. Are you terrified? He'd looked at her then. Really looked at her, the way he had learned to over 3 months of early mornings and late nights, and the slow, extraordinary process of watching an Empress become a person. Her silver-white hair was still loose. Her violet eyes held steady on his. She was asking honestly, not rhetorically. Yeah, he said. I'm terrified. But I was also terrified the first time I ran a code on a patient. Didn't stop me then. She had almost smiled. Almost. Now he stood in the corridor outside the chamber where, in approximately 10 minutes, he would be presented to the Imperial Council of the Valith Dominion. He was wearing clothes Sereth had provided, human formal wear, a dark suit, because Sereth had argued successfully that dressing him in Valith garments would look like either mockery or capitulation. You look like you're attending a funeral, Sereth said, adjusting his collar with clinical efficiency. I feel like I'm attending my own, possibly. Lord Mavar will attempt to humiliate you. He will question your species, your status, your worthiness. He may insult your intelligence, your appearance, your world. The council will watch how you respond. And how should I respond? Sereth paused. She looked at him with an expression he had come to recognize over the past 20 hours, the face of someone recalibrating their assumptions. I have served the Empress for 21 years, she said. I have seen ambassadors and admirals and kings stand in that chamber. Most of them performed. They wore confidence like armor. They spoke as though their words were weapons. She straightened his collar one final time. Don't do that. She did not choose you because you perform well. She chose you because you are genuine. Be that. The doors opened. The Hall of Pillars was exactly as intimidating as Marcus had imagined, and worse than he had prepared for. 47 representatives of an alien civilization that commanded a significant portion of the known galaxy looked down at him from elevated seats. Their skin ranged from deep silver to pale violet. Their eyes, uniformly large, luminous, tracked him the way a predator tracks movement. At the far end, on the raised dais, Alindra sat on the imperial throne. She wore her full ceremonial armor now, a lattice of bioresponsive metal that shifted and flowed with her movements, projecting authority the way a star projects light. Her crown was a simple band of white metal that seemed to absorb the chamber's light rather than reflect it. She looked, Marcus thought, like a completely different person from the woman who had sat in his shop eating a blueberry scone and trying to explain the concept of cozy in Valith, which had no equivalent word. But her eyes were the same. Her eyes found his across the length of the chamber, and in them he saw the same woman who had stood in his kitchen at 2 a.m, unable to sleep, listening to him talk about the patients he still cared. Lord Mavar rose immediately. The council recognizes the human Marcus Aurelio of New Thessaly, he said, and his voice made Marcus's name sound like a disease. You stand before the sovereign body of the Valith Dominion. Do you understand where you are? Yes. And do you understand why you are here? Because the woman I care about asked me to come. A ripple moved through the chamber. The word woman, applied to the Empress, was apparently shocking. The woman, Mavar repeated. You refer to her radiance, the Empress Alindra Val Soreth. First light of, I know her titles. She told me all of them once. Took about 5 minutes. Marcus paused. I still call her Alindra. Maevar's silver skin darkened. The Veilith equivalent, Marcus had learned, of a flush of anger. You presume a familiarity that your station does not grant. I don't have a station. I make coffee. Precisely. You are a shopkeeper. A member of a species that has achieved interstellar capability within living memory. You possess no lineage, no political standing, no military rank, no cultural significance. By what right do you stand in this chamber? Marcus looked at Maevar for a long moment. The chamber was silent. The walls had shifted to a deep, watchful blue. By no right, Marcus said, you're correct. You're correct. I have no right to be here. I have no title, no fleet, no bloodline that matters to anyone in this room. I'm a guy who makes coffee on a planet most of you couldn't find on a star chart. He took a breath, but here's what I do have. I have 3 months of sitting with a woman who couldn't sleep, and not once asking her for anything. I have 100 mornings of making her coffee exactly the way she likes it. Strong, no sugar, in the blue cup, not because she ordered me to, but because I paid attention. I have the memory of her laughing, actually laughing, for the first time, and how she covered her mouth like she was embarrassed, and how I told her she never had to hide that. Not from me. He looked at Alindra. She was very still on the throne. I have the fact that when she told me she was the Empress of a galactic dominion, I made her pasta because it was Tuesday. I have the fact that she cried in my kitchen once, and I held her, and I didn't ask why. And she told me later it was because no one had held her in 11 years. His voice roughened, but held. I don't have a right to be here, Lord Maevar. But she asked me to come. And where I'm from, when someone you love asks you to walk into a room full of people who want to destroy them, you walk into that room. That's it. That's the whole thing. The chamber was absolutely silent. Then Lady Dorith, the ancient head of House Verith, spoke from her seat. The human speaks of love as though it is an action, she said, not a state. Not a declaration. An action. Where I'm from, Marcus said, love is a verb. It's what you do, not what you say. Dorith looked at him for a long time. Then she looked at the Empress. Your Radiance, she said, I have sat on this council for 46 years. I have seen 3 emperors and 2 empresses before you. I have watched each of them enter bonded partnerships, alliances of lineage and strategy, approved by this council, sanctified by the lattice. She paused. Not one of them was happy. Not one of them was held when they cried. She rose to her feet. House Verith supports the Empress. And House Verith recognizes the human. The chamber erupted, but differently than before. Not in unified outrage. In fracture. Voices rose against each other. Maevar shouted for order. 3 houses immediately followed Dorith's lead. 2 more wavered, their representatives looking between Maevar's fury and the quiet figure of a human man standing on the chamber floor with nothing to offer except the truth. Maevar slammed his fist against his podium. This is a degradation of everything the Dominion represents. A human, a common, unremarkable human, standing in the Hall of Pillars as though he belongs here. He belongs where I say he belongs. Alindra's voice cut through the chamber like light through glass. She stood from the throne and descended the steps, again to the floor, to the level of the council, and walked to where Marcus stood. She took his hand. The gesture was small. In human terms, it was nothing. Lovers held hands on every street on every human world. But in the Hall of Pillars, before the full council, for an empress to touch an unbonded partner was an act of such profound declaration that several council members physically recoiled. I am your Empress, Alindra said, and her voice was steady now, filled with something that had been absent from it for 11 years. I have given this dominion my youth, my health, my sleep, my solitude. I have bled for you in ways this council will never see. And I am telling you now, not asking, telling that this man stands with me. Not because of his species, not because of his station, because he is the only person in my life who has ever loved me as a person rather than a symbol. She looked at Maevar. You called him unremarkable. You're wrong. The most remarkable thing I have ever witnessed is a man who learned that the woman washing dishes in his shop was the ruler of a galactic empire and chose to treat her exactly the same. That is not weakness, Lord Mavar. That is a kind of strength your political calculations will never understand. Mavar looked at the chamber. He counted votes. He calculated trajectories. And he saw, clearly, in the faces of the wavering houses, in the ancient certainty of Dorith's expression, in the quiet erosion of his coalition, that he had lost. Not because of politics. Not because of power. Because a man had stood in the most powerful chamber in the galaxy and talked about a blue coffee cup. The vote was called again. This time the count went differently. 26 for the Empress. 21 against. The removal proceedings died on the chamber floor. Mavar sat down in silence. Later, hours later, after the ceremonies and the formalities and the endless political machinery had ground through its processes, Marcus stood on a balcony overlooking the Valith capital. The city stretched below in patterns of light that pulsed with a rhythm he was beginning to recognize as biological. The entire city was alive, in some way he didn't fully understand, breathing along with its inhabitants. Elindra found him there, still in her armor, her crown catching the light of the 3 moons that hung low in silver over the skyline. "You should know," she said, leaning against the railing beside him, "that what happened today changes nothing about the political reality. Mavar will continue to work against us. The traditionalists will never fully accept you. The Keth conflict will demand my attention for months, possibly years. I know. You will be lonely here. This is not New Thessaly. There are no bookstores. No cats. You have a bioluminescent ceiling that changes color based on emotions. That's pretty cool." She looked at him. The mask was gone, the composed imperial expression she wore like armor. In its place was the face he knew. The face from the corner table. From the kitchen at 2 in the morning. From the quiet moments between moments that made up the geography of falling in love. "Marcus? Yeah?" The Empress vanished for 3 months. They found her in a human coffee shop. She said it with a faint, wondering disbelief, as though she was still trying to understand the shape of her own story. "That is what they will say about me. For the rest of history, that is my legacy. Could be worse. How?" He turned to face her. Gently, carefully. The way he had learned to. Because she startled at unexpected touch. Because 11 years of untouched sovereignty had made closeness feel like an ambush. He reached up and tucked a strand of silver-white hair behind her ear. They could say the Empress spent her whole life on a throne and never found out what it felt like to be happy. Her breath caught. The bioluminescent panels on the balcony's inner wall shifted from the deep amber of anxiety through a color Marcus hadn't seen before, a warm, soft gold like sunlight through honey. "What color is that?" he asked. Elindra's eyes were bright. She leaned into him, slowly, deliberately, the way she did everything, and rested her forehead against his shoulder. "There isn't a word for it in Valith," she said. "We've never needed one." Marcus put his arms around her, held her the way he had held her in his kitchen that night when she had cried, gently, completely, without agenda. Below them, the living city pulsed gold. Above them, the 3 moons hung in the dark, and the galaxy turned, vast and indifferent, and full of empires that understood power, but had never quite figured out the simple, devastating mathematics of one person choosing another. Advantage, not for alliance, not for the architecture of nations, but because they looked tired, and you had coffee, and some things don't need to be more complicated than that.
¿Por qué? ¿Qué pasó?
Huele a cola. Cambie la escena, jajajaja.
Ah, yo pensé que enseñé lo que no debía. A la verga, pinche mascota.
Porque esa Ariane tiene líquidos raros. ¿Nos puedes dedicar un ñan, Gerardo Kun?
Ahorita, no estén chingando. Tenemos que subirnos al carro en putiza. No, deja choco las cámaras para que no haya nadie viéndome.
Pinche moscota.
Sí, ¿sí la viste?
Qué bonita casa, tío. Es tuya.
Sí, esta es la casa
A
que
ver la
agarré.
cola.
No, no están chingando ahorita.
Apa, y es normal que se le haya visto el huevito.
Ah, sí, como está, sí. Ok. Deja checo la cámara,
A ver,
espérame.
mi novia.
Pero, acá anda. A la verga, si es una pinche
¿En
mascota.
cuánto andan? ¿Dónde está Emma?
Acá anda escondido.
Huevos con jamón.
¿Cómo? Ahí está, mira. ¿Qué pasó, perro? Vente.
Holly ni piciosa.
Portas bien, perro, No vas a hacer desmadre. Ten una galleta. Ven. Déjala bien, es una cancha que no vaya.
Cuchichichi. Te juzga en silencio. Así vi al James en el Sirven. Hay más linda. Anda descansando o le das vergüenza, jajasia. Emma en corto que te paso, güey. Pero le corres, güey.
Sí, no, hay que correrle ahorita. Ven.
Traemela, la quiero besar.
No, ahorita no. Vámonos. Está todo cerrado. Asegurarse.
Ese güey XD.
¿Qué pasó? Voy a llevar las 2 cocas, chingue su madre. Hay que correrle, güey. Hay que meterse al carro, pero en putiza, güey. Porque esta mamada no.
En cuanto anda una casa así, tío.
No, pues caminamos con short, güey. Chingue su madre. No, ahí tal vez si no fuera, güey.
Vas a salir corriendo con tu rebanada de pan en la boca como si fuera anime.
Deja que se vaya el vecino, güey. Espérate, deja que se vaya, güey. Espérate. Deja que se vaya.
Te hablo WEE.
Espérame. ¿Qué pasó? La casa está
Te
como...
pusiste la tanga VV.
La casa está como... Bueno, la agarré como en 200 barros, güey. Bueno, la estoy pagando todavía.
Ponte una chamarra larga. Ya súbete.
Espérate, pues no creo que me vean mis vecinos así con esta mamada, güey. También tú. Ándale, carnal, ya vete.
Los vecinos no te mirarán que vayas de waifu.
Sí, como verga no, güey.
Pero está grande, güey. Algo bien, pa. Ponte una toalla.
Me quito esta madre, o sea, me quito esto del delantal, güey. Y me voy así. Y al rato me la pongo de nuevo.
Si pusiste el emblema.
Sí, se lo puse. ¿Cómo ven? Me quito esto blanco nomás. Y al rato me lo pongo de nuevo. ¿Cómo ven?
Jajaja.
Sí, ¿no?
Ponte un abrigo de esos de pervertido en pingas.
Es que no tengo, güey.
Si le da vergüenza robar, güey. A ver las nalgas.
No, vete a la
como
verga.
si los vecinos lo supieran como eres.
Ya, eso,
no, güey.
eso.
Dice Ibur que si pone el de privacidad.
No,
te van a
no.
ver los vecinos y van a decir ahí estos jóvenes de ahora.
Sí, Bur, ponle privacidad, por favor.
Si quieres ser mi
Sí.
vieja. Vas a parecer monja. Completo brillo te linchamos. ¿Cuántas horas de stream haces hoy? Arigato.
Vámonos, ya se pone. Vámonos. No hay nadie. No, güey. O sea, le apunté, güey. Le digo que... No, güey. Güey, no. Bueno. Güey. Yo no tengo la culpa, güey. Nada que ver con un GT, güey. ¿Qué verga? Yo no conozco los carros si eso no es un GT, güey. O sí, no, es un Corvette, güey. Uy, qué bonito color, Es como color amarillo y azul y la chingada. Mira. Es un Corvette, güey. Y este es un Tesla, güey. Qué asco, güey. Qué asco grabarlo, güey. Me acuerdo de ese puto anime, güey. Pero no me acuerdo dónde, güey. Mira, güey. Qué puto taku, güey. Qué god, güey. Sácale clip, güey. A la verga. Qué god, güey. El color está muy perro, Verga, güey. Qué god, güey. Quiero ver qué tiene del otro lado, güey. Y es un Tesla nuevo, Es un Tesla nuevecito, güey. No voy a poder que tiene del otro lado, güey. Puta madre. So yeah, you should try it out, man. It's pretty fun right there. You get a lot of viewers right there.
What is it?
It's Twitch.
Oh, Twitch?
Yeah, so it's Twitch.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Crazy.
Yeah. Oh damn, man. How long you have them?
I have a bunch.
Oh, you have a bunch?
Yeah.
Do you have them like a little office or something like that?
I just bring them out here.
Oh shit. Yeah, they're pretty nice, bro. Shit.
I got like 10 of them.
You have like 10 of them. You go here like all night?
No, I just come here for a few hours.
Little few hours? Oh, okay. Here you go, man. Yeah, they're pretty nice, bro. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hope that Twitch is cool.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Hell yeah.
Let me give you a little tip.
Oh, thank you, bro. We tell the girls, stroke it, it won't get hard, and the guys, hold my snake, no diddy. That's my joke. Or in Spanish, no seas out the way, beat on grande to the girls.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much.
Very good,
bro.
little tip.
Is that fun?
Take care, okay. Yeah,
Make sure
man,
your
thank you.
snake's number one with the ladies.
I hope so too, man. Thank you. Take care, man. ¡Qué alegría! ¡Ay, güey!
Compa vestido así es como la tradición de los escoceses con faldas.
Se siente bien andar con falda, güey. Se siente bien andar con falda, güey. Se siente god. Sí.
Te pusiste las esponjas.
¿Cuáles esponjas? A la verga, me pica algo. Todo. Y a conquistarla.
Andas fresquito.